Support for WKGC Public Media comes from listeners like you, people who believe in the power of local radio to inform, inspire, and connect the Emerald Coast community. Your gift helps keep educational and entertaining programs on the air while creating hands-on learning opportunities for students. Become a listener supporter today and give securely at WKGC.org. WKGC, education, entertainment, and everything in between. From WKGC Public Media, this is ReelTalk, the place where you can join the cinematic conversations frame by frame each week. I'm your host, R.L. Terry. If movies are your thing, you're in the right place. Today we are reviewing Wicked for Good, the flashy, ambitious sequel that promised to defy gravity, but for many of us, landed with a thud. And while the heart for the material is undeniably present, director Jon M's affection radiates through every frame. The execution is fraught with problems that prevent the film from casting the spell it so eagerly attempts, at least in the opinion of this critic. It's a movie overloaded with spectacle, yet starved of narrative discipline, regrettably proving that sometimes a production can have all the right ingredients and still mix the potion incorrectly. On paper, this movie has everything. A beloved Broadway pedigree, vivid Ozian visuals, big names attached, and a fan base expecting pure magic. But passion alone isn't enough to carry a movie. What we got instead was spectacle without structure, heartbreak with hurried pacing, and ambition tangled in contradictions. The show-stopping musical numbers never failed to impress, yet the movie struggles both emotionally and narratively. Tonight we'll talk pacing, plotting, legacy versus adaptation, and whether this movie, ordained to defy gravity, ever truly lifts off the yellow brick road. Joining me today is a first-time guest and longtime friend of mine, Jennifer Weed, joining us from my hometown of Aiken, South Carolina. Welcome to the show, Jen.
Thanks very much, Ryan. I'm glad to be here.
And while she may not be a filmmaker or critic, Jen brings a uniquely insightful perspective to storytelling. Jen holds graduate and undergraduate degrees in translation and linguistics, respectively, giving her a deep understanding of how language shapes narrative, character, and world building. She's also working on her first novel, thus her special love for high fantasy, so she knows her way around immersive worlds, mythic structures, and the craft of compelling fiction. I'm looking forward to her approach to storytelling, underscored by scholarly precision and a creator's mindset. So, Jen, before we get into the movie, a question I ask all my first-time guests, and even though I may know the answer to this because we've known each other for, 25 years, what are, say, 2 to 3 of your favorite movies and why?
As far as movies are concerned, and yes, you probably knew right off the bat what I was going to say. It is Lord of the Rings, all 3 of the movies. And though I will say I'm actually more of a fan of the books than I am of the movie. So I'm definitely more a book fan than a movie fan.
Which ties in wonderfully to what we're talking about today, as it's not only inspired by the Broadway show itself was inspired by Gregory Maguire's books, so great tie-in there. But before we get into the movie, any other movies you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I grew up watching a lot of the James Bond movies, which of course isn't really fantasy in the strictest sense, but that was something that I did with my dad a lot. We really enjoyed watching those movies when I was a kid. So
Okay, so we can't move forward because since you brought up James Bond, which we've covered on this show, listeners, you can go back on our podcast and listen to the James Bond episode. But who takes the number 1 spot for your favorite cinematic portrayal of James Bond?
oh my goodness, I kind of have a tie here.
Okay.
It's definitely, I think the best would be classic Sean Connery. But I have a special place in my heart for Roger Moore, because those are kind of the movies that my parents knew, and so those are the ones they showed me a lot.
Mhm.
But I think one of my favorite films is one of the Sean Connery films. So probably a little bit of both of them.
Excellent. I'm gonna. The same question was asked of me, and it's my show, so I'm gonna offer up my answer anyway. So, my favorite James Bond is comes from the movie, which is probably the one that first introduced me to the world of James Bond, and that is Pierce Brosnan in GoldenEye. Also, one of the best N64 games of all time, which I
Yeah,
think
that's
still holds a
classic.
record for number of sales. But no, love Pierce Brosnan. I tell you why though. It's not, and I'm not going to get too far off track here. I know we got to talk about Wicked, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention specifically why. It's he has the look, he has the charisma, but what makes his Bond my favorite aren't those two defining elements. It's actually Dame Judy
Of
Dench's
course.
M. Without her, I do not think I would hold his Bond in such high regard. I do in part because of her. And having seen most of the James Bond movies, not all of them, several times like you have, but having seen most of them, I must say that she is my favorite M. Uh,
Yeah,
she she
she is very good. Yeah,
She's
I agree.
so good and just classes up the movie. Every scene she's in, it just feels instantly classier. So, but she's his foil, and she balances his more eccentricities out.
I think it's definitely it was a bold move, for a character that was
Mhm.
mostly considered to be a womanizer to have be have his boss be a really strong woman. So,
Very
yeah,
much so. Well, next time we get a James Bond movie, which I hope after the recent acquisition, it's not going to be just like straight to Amazon Prime. But who
right.
knows with what we have? But you have to come back on the show and we can talk
Yeah,
about the
definitely.
newest iteration of James Bond. So, Jen, while many saw the movie opening weekend, and it was certainly a popular choice over this past Thanksgiving holiday weekend, for those that have not seen Wicked for Good, what's it all about?
Well, it's the second part of the story that started with, of course, the first part that came out a couple years ago. And it kind of finishes the story and brings you up to theoretically where the original Wizard of Oz movie occurs. So it shows
Hmm.
you how she became or was considered the Wicked Witch of the West, right? And
Hmm.
it also shows the friendship between Glinda and Elphaba, which are the names, of course, which we knew Glinda ahead of time, but they gave the musical gave the name Elphaba to the Wicked Witch of the West. So it shows their friendship, and it shows like how their friendship evolved through um, these different things that they were supposed to, they were supposed to be certain things, and they both there it was the movie very much showed how they got to what we consider them to be. I guess that's not the greatest explanation of the story, but
No, I think that sounds fabulous. Thank you so much for that. So, listeners, if you haven't seen the movie yet, now's your chance to decide if you're going to go out and see it now. Maybe wait for it to go to streaming. And of course, listeners, if I'm saying it's okay to wait for something to come to streaming, it gives you an idea of a little bit more of what I thought about this movie. But I digress. I want to go ahead and jump into it here. But before we talk details, Jen, just here at the top, what is your, say, 20,000 foot level opinion of the movie?
um I would say I think it was good. um I wouldn't say it was an excellent adaptation of a musical, but I would say, it was a decent adaptation. I do feel like there are some constraints when you're adapting a musical. But I felt like, I came out of it appreciating some of the beats of it, and I thought that it was decent. But like I said, I don't know if I would consider it top tier.
So, how about comparing it to the first installment? We're undoubtedly going to be talking about elements of both this hour. So, comparing it to the first one, would you say this one is on par with, maybe above par, below par? Where would you put Wicked for Good compared to Wicked?
I do think that maybe the second one probably didn't reach quite the emotional beats of the first one. I
Mhm.
felt like the first one probably had a little bit more to it that I enjoyed it quite a bit more, probably.
Yeah, I'd say I've talked a lot about my 20,000 foot level, but to kind of surmise the opening monologue, I'd say its reach far exceeded its grasp. It was, I can tell undeniably, huge passion behind this
Oh, yeah,
installment,
I agree.
but it was it needed more of an administrative backbone. I feel what's missing in the movie can be largely boiled down to one word, and that is discipline. In the days of the studio era, one of the I think the studio system was great in many respects. Certainly not a perfect system, but a great system. And what the studio system provided was producers and production chiefs that oftentimes tempered directors' eccentricities. They provided structure, they provided discipline, and they provided checks and balances for directors and to a lesser extent writers, because writers unfortunately in the early days of the studio system did not get the recognition they do today, and of course today they're probably still some of the least known names, but that's a story for another
I
time.
think if you
uh,
ask most people, they would not know what a producer
no.
does.
So, but it used to be very well defined. Today,
Right.
less so, with a lot of directors also being writers, something I oftentimes despise and will negatively criticize. And I think that's what it's missing. It's missing that discipline that I think could have made the this installment a little tighter. Probably could have cut out 20 minutes, maybe even 30 minutes. I think you could have got it down. More importantly, I think you could have taken both the part one and two and put them together in a single movie. Which leads me to the first thing that I want to talk about is I feel, and tell me if you feel differently, please. I feel that the film splits what could have easily been one movie. After all, it is one Broadway show, about 2.5 hours, like a typical Broadway show. So, Jennifer, do you think that structural choice hurt the emotional momentum and dilute the story's impact as we go from one to two, or where do you sit along that spectrum?
I think you could probably go either way. I agree with you that the entire thing was meant to be seen all at one time. I mean, you would have had like a 15-minute intermission
Hmm.
between acts 1 and acts 2. And so there are definitely things that if you didn't watch maybe part 1, which I
Hmm.
didn't immediately before it. I did watch it, but it was about, it was several months ago. I think you are missing some of that background. I think if you went in and you had not even seen part 1, you definitely could not have jumped into this.
Hmm.
But I think I understand maybe the inclination to want to split it into multiple parts. I mean, I am sometimes skeptical of that because it could be a money grab. But at the same time, I understand the inclination to want to let the characters breathe a little bit,
Hmm.
which I think was kind of, at least from what I read, that was a lot of what the motivation behind splitting
Hmm.
it was. But yeah, I think, I don't know. I feel like it probably could have been done successfully as one film.
Hmm.
Um, but at the same time, we would have been missing maybe a little bit of character development. So
Okay, so you think splitting it into two parts, at least on paper anyway, allowed more opportunity for character development.
right. And I
And
will say I don't know if they entirely took advantage of that. Like if you are going to
yeah,
split it up, you need to take advantage of that time well.
yeah, I think if we had had it as one movie with the right script, with the right writers,
Yeah,
I think we could have had excellent character development. There's plenty of examples of movies out there that are 90 and 120 minutes and it has fantastic character development.
right.
And so I don't think you need what it's almost 5 hours collectively, almost 5 hours for that. And anyway, if you can't develop your characters over the course of 5 hours, you really have a problem. Uh, by splitting it up into two movies, I feel there are scenes, and you could apply this to both movies, particularly the second one, scenes that either end abruptly or they linger with this self-importance, this self-indulgence way longer than it should, which gives the whole movie this sort of stop and start rhythm that betrays any emotional momentum or to your point, character development. There was certainly opportunity for it, don't think they took full advantage of it. And then moments that should breathe feel suffocated,
Yeah.
and others that should be tightened sprawl on endlessly. And I think that's where a disciplined producer or a director who is willing to listen to perhaps feedback from a writer uh, could have overcome that. And even there's some plot points in here that feel completely telegraphed or unearned, creating a
Yeah.
sense that events are just happening because, oh, time for this to happen because the script demands it, not because the characters have earned the journey. And emotional beats are, they're pushed rather than, again, to your point, rather than developed. And so I can tell that it wants to tug at heartstrings. It wants to strike that balance between some nostalgia for the 1939 movie, perhaps even nostalgia for Wicked when it first hit Broadway in 2003, I think it was. And so, but it's not it's not wielded with discipline. But I tell you what, the film does deliver, or maybe more precisely, does attempt to deliver, and that's
Mhm.
dazzling visuals and production design. But I think that the visuals and production design may, in fact, mask narrative weaknesses. And so, where the film is weak, it's like jazz hands. We're going to be very exciting and colorful and try to impress people with what computers can do. I'm way more impressed with what the human hand can do. I'm tired of filmmakers thinking they're going to impress me with what a computer can do. But uh, do you feel that the visuals and production design? Do you feel that style, the stylistic Ozian look, helps the narrative? Do you think or do you think it hurts it? Another way, do you think this thing is more of a strength or more of a burden? Where do you fall along that spectrum?
I don't know. I think I'm neutral on this. I feel
Okay.
like the visuals definitely help you feel like you're in Oz. Like if you
Hmm.
took any screenshot image of, whatever, I would say, "Oh, that's the Emerald City." And I think as far as world building is concerned,
Hmm.
you do feel like you're in Oz. And
Okay.
I liked that.
Okay.
That being said, if, would the narrative weaknesses, if would they had, I don't know, I don't know if the world building in this necessarily helped or hurt
Hmm.
the narrative. It's just, you're in Oz, and I think that's what people wanna see is they wanna be in Oz.
Yeah. Yeah, and they certainly are. I agree with you that the real costuming, not the CGI characters in the background costuming, but the real
Right, yeah.
costuming and world building are incredibly elaborate and very much polished, maybe a little too polished, but they're so elaborate and so polished that I feel they call attention to how thin and disorganized the story underneath really is. When every frame is bursting with spectacle, yet the pacing is off, I feel the emotional beats they come across as manufactured, contrived, and there's
It
this
doesn't feel grounded.
yes, there's this disconnect that's there. And also, when every frame is bursting with spectacle, then no frame is. It's like I'm kind of borrowing from The Incredibles. When everybody is super, nobody is. When
Right.
every frame is bursting with spectacle, nothing is. We can even relate this to housing. Every time a new housing development or apartment complex goes up, the word luxury is thrown in there. Well, newsflash, if everything is luxury, then
Yeah,
nothing
right.
is.
Nothing is luxury.
So, and to
Right.
builders out there, the faux marble countertops and stainless steel appliances does not a luxury apartment or house make. Just saying. So again, I think it can be a strength or a burden. I see you're kind of in between the two. I'm more of a burden, but I think we can really take that to mean that it probably fell short of where it wanted to be, where it so desperately wanted to be in wielding that. And I've seen some behind the scenes photos. I thought, there is more practical than that for which I originally gave the film credit, but there's still an awful lot of CGI, and it looks kind of
Mhm.
wonky, particularly there at the beginning with all the not munchkins there in the background. But anyway, you're listening to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. I'm your host, R.L. Terry, and today I am joined by linguist and scholar and longtime friend of mine, Jennifer Weed. This hour, we are reviewing Wicked for Good. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more on our thoughts on the highly anticipated movie musical after this break. Welcome back to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. I'm your host, R.L. Terry, and today I am joined by linguist and scholar and longtime friend of mine, Jennifer Weed. This hour, we are reviewing Wicked for Good. Jen, many plot turns feel telegraphed. Mentioned that earlier in the show, or unearned, one may say. Which moments in the film rang true for you, and which felt like forced plot beats designed for more spectacle, or felt more contrived than actual story or narrative?
I think in the positives, I do feel like the friendship between Elphaba and Glinda, I felt like that was probably the strongest relationship. That felt like that was more real. Some of the other things, like I felt like the romance between Elphaba and what was his name, Fiero.
Hmm.
That felt like I felt like we needed a few more reminders that she kind of liked him from the first movie. Um, for that, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. Um, and I felt like that the same thing with very similar at the end, which yeah, I allowed to give spoilers here?
We try to steer clear of them because the movie is still fairly new, but you can talk around them to help
Okay.
illustrate your point.
I would say that there was a reveal, I suppose, though you could have seen it coming at the end. I felt like it probably could have been paid off a little better. And just a couple of, I think most everything else, I don't want to give spoilers, but
Hmm.
most of the other things that I was thinking about, they just didn't feel like they were quite there. But I did feel like
Hmm.
the main point was the friendship between Elphaba and Glinda,
Hmm.
and I felt like that was probably the strongest.
Okay, so you believe the friendship between the two of them from the beginning of part one to the end of part two, that relationship felt true in
Right.
its representation, and there were times in the movie that I would totally agree with you. The moments that rang true for me were the ones, and albeit rare, in which the movie stopped long enough to let the characters exist instead of merely performing. The performative dimension is quite strong for a movie musical. Uh, and the performers, I feel, believe in their character.
Right. Yeah.
However, there were so many times that I didn't feel as though they could exist in this world and were just so busy performing. And that gets back to that issue with the pacing that we talked about earlier. This film
I
just
think
feels like it's in 10th gear the entire time. And I like the moments, and there were a few of them. And I agree with you. There are definitely times I'm totally sold on their relationship. There's also moments when Elphaba wrestles with her identity, or the other times in which the emotional conflict is allowed to simmer. But a lot of times, I just don't think the movie stopped long enough to allow them to do that. What do you
And
think?
I wonder if some of that is because they're adapting a musical.
Mm.
And I think, they're trying to hit these points that people that love the musical will remember, right?
Mhm.
And I sometimes wonder if the pacing in general was more of a musical pacing and less
Mhm.
of a movie pacing. So I don't know. I think that would be. I mean, I'm not. I've never adapted a musical for screen, so I
Yeah.
can't really, say much about that. But I would say that the pacing structure would be a lot different.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know. I do feel like there would have been things they could have done to make them feel a little bit better. But some
Mhm.
things I thought when I was sitting there, I thought this would have been so much better live.
Mm. Now, have you seen Wicked on Broadway or a national tour?
Oh, but I would love to see it. I love seeing musicals. I've seen um, Sound of Music. I've seen Beauty and the Beast. I've seen
Mhm.
the opera. I think it's just a different kind of experience when
Mhm.
you're watching something live
Mhm.
versus sitting and watching it
Yeah.
in a movie. So yeah, I think some of that could have been just trying to stay true to the
Mhm.
musical.
And I think oftentimes the stories that originate on Broadway, and I understand many of those are, based on books, but the stories that originate on Broadway oftentimes do are more exciting to watch or more compelling to watch in person versus their screen adaptation. I think, in my opinion, there's some notable exceptions to that, such as Chicago. I've seen Chicago on Broadway.
Mhm.
Tour of Chicago. So I've seen
Right.
Chicago, the national tour, and I've also seen the Academy Award winning, Chicago, and the Renee Zellweger, Catherine Zeta-Jones, and Richard Gere in those key roles in Chicago. I think it's much better as a film
Mm.
than it was on the stage. Cabaret is another example that I think the Liza Minnelli picture is better than the stage version. And there are others that, as much fun as they were to watch on screen, they were still a bit more fun on Broadway, like Mamma Mia. I think works
Right.
incredibly well as a film, but there is this kind of interactionary element that the Broadway cast brought, particularly at the end, in which they invite everybody to sing and dance along with its reprisal of Mamma Mia and Dancing Queen and maybe a couple others there at the very end. But this is one I can't provide much in the way of comment because I've not seen Wicked live, and some of that is because when it was first on Broadway and then as it continued to run, everybody heralded it as like the best thing since Phantom of the Opera. It was like that. It was like
Mhm.
the
Right. I
Phantom of the
remember that.
Opera of 2003 until it closed.
Mhm.
And I don't know about you, Jen, but for me, if something is super popular in which popular culture is
You
saying
rebel against it.
yes, I do. I don't want
Yeah.
pop culture to tell me what is great and that I need to like it. If you tell me that, I am probably going to avoid it because I don't want to be caught in some like bandwagoning
Right, no,
of
I
of
completely
a
get that. I
show.
am the same way. I'm the same way, and which, Phantom of the Opera was one of my favorites,
Yeah.
and that was from way before I was alive.
Yeah.
My mom's favorite, and that's why it was my
Yeah.
favorite, so, yeah.
And it's coming back. I don't know if you've been reading much on that. I think it's some reimagining going on. Don't I'm not always a fan of reimagining. More
Yeah, I
usually no, but we'll see what the
yeah, I was not
fandom
a
does.
fan. I liked the live version of
Hmm.
Phantom of the Opera better than the movie.
I read the Joel
So,
Schumacher film from 2004. Yeah,
the one with Jared
2004.
Butler?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel the same way
But
there.
that being said, I loved Les Miserables in film. The
Ah,
movie, I
okay.
loved the movie of Les Miserables. That was actually one of the films that I will watch and still, like, just start crying. So
Oh, well, it's I've seen it one time. And I gave it a very positive review. It is just not one that I feel I ever need to revisit it. And it's
And
not
see,
just the runtime. It's just there's other things going on there. But I do remember writing a very positive review.
and I think one thing we're missing in all of this is a lot of times people see this because they love the music.
Yeah.
And if the music is if it doesn't hit, then it's a musical, it better hit, right?
Mhm.
So, I think a lot of people are gonna love this just because they love the music.
Well,
So
that's a great segue. As I understand it, your mom went with you to the cinema to watch it
yes.
in preparation of the show, but more specifically, she went because the choral society of which she is part has performed
As
songs from Wicked,
making music,
making
her
music.
her, her a cappella group, yeah.
You just talked about people are gravitated to a movie musical that's often based on a Broadway show because of the songs. So,
Mhm.
what was your mom's reaction to it? Having a love or some level of affinity for the songs themselves. What was her experience like watching the movie?
She said that really she only ever sang for good, which of course
Okay.
she said when she watched the first part, she was sad because she didn't hear that song and she's like, that's the one I know. So this one she actually liked a little more because she finally
Hmm.
got to hear that song.
Ah.
And she said that she kind of teared up a little bit. The funny thing is I've actually played because I play in a concert band
Mhm.
and, I've played the music from Wicked as well, but I have no
Oh.
idea of the lyrics because I've just played the instrumental parts.
Mhm.
So, when I heard the lyrics, I was like, "Oh, yeah, I that makes sense," and so
Mhm.
I can see why a lot of people love the music because, yeah, and I talked to her before this that she felt like some musicals have this tendency to just sing talking,
Mhm.
um, and it's not catchy.
Mm.
And I think Wicked is not one of those. I feel like it's definitely more some of these songs are very catchy. Maybe not all of them, and not all of
Yeah.
them are meant to be, but there's definitely songs that you hear people wanting to sing and
Mhm. Like Defying Gravity,
right,
that
defying
one.
gravity and and popular
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
so I mean,
And For Good, I think those are the ones I've heard
right.
outside of the movie theater the most. It's For Good,
Yeah, yeah.
Popular,
Yep.
and,
Yep.
Defying Gravity.
Yeah, and yeah, I get them stuck in my head, which I guess is that's normally a good sign. If a
Mhm.
song is catchy, you get them stuck in your head. So,
Yeah, and, did you find yourself, humming along as as the songs, as, Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande were singing? Did you find yourself humming along with them?
um, maybe a little bit, but I early in this part, it was funny because even though they never sang "Defying Gravity," you could hear
Mhm.
strains of it throughout.
Yeah.
And so every time that would come on, I'd be like, da, 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 da. And I was like, woohoo.
It's, kind of the film's, theme, much in the same way Over the Rainbow is a theme in the original movie,
Yeah.
and, movies like an easy one is Jurassic Park. You hear the Jurassic Park
Hmm,
theme,
hmm.
in different variations and expressions, throughout it. So I think Defying Gravity is that motif, that theme that we get, throughout the movie. Um, and we touched on the relationship between the show and its, original material just a moment ago, and I want to dive a little bit more deeply into that. And so while I am aware that the Broadway show Wicked is based on a book, not the 1939 MGM spectacular, um, that this movie that we're discussing today is based on that Broadway show. Now, given the film's obvious nods to and its intersections with the 1939 Wizard of Oz, and it's everything from its opening title card to other moments that punctuate the movie. Jen, does Wicked for Good honor that legacy, or do you feel it betrays it?
So I when thinking about this, I actually think back to not only the 1939 Wizard of Oz, but there was a
Mhm.
book before that.
Mhm.
L. Frank Baum wrote The Wizard of Oz,
Mhm.
many, 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 many years ago. And I actually have one of the original copies that my grandfather gave me. But I think sometimes you have to go back to like what was the original author's intent?
Mhm.
And his intent was kind of to get away from the grim fairy tales. Like the grim fairy
Mhm.
tales where they're scary. It's basically behave or you'll get eaten, right?
Oh, yes,
Um
it is be good or die.
So right, exactly. So his intent was to kind of have a story that had
Mhm.
more wonder and imagination,
Mm.
and there's people that read all sorts of, other things, political commentary and that sort of thing into
Yeah.
it. But his original thing was mainly to give kids stories that they,
Mm.
would love to be in that world and, feel good for having an imagination.
Mhm.
And the funny thing throughout that is I think Oz has become kind of a cultural touchstone.
Mhm.
um Everybody knows what
Yeah.
Oz is.
Mhm.
And even if they never read the original book, they've seen the 1939 movie, or they know about Wicked the book, they know about Wicked the musical, now they know about Wicked the movie.
Mhm.
There's other adaptations. I have a couple of mine that, of some adaptations that I really love.
Mhm.
um there were other movies made. I can't remember. There was one a couple years back that was all about the origins of the wizard. So there's all these different adaptations, and I think the main idea is it lighthearted?
Mhm.
And the Wicked book is not. And I feel like the musical actually comes closer to the original intent than maybe the book
Mm.
itself. The
Hmm.
book was a lot darker.
Mhm.
Um and the musical brought back in the lightness of their friendship and more of a positive spin on it. So I
Mhm.
don't know about betrayal.
Mhm.
um I would say it's just one version of a story we all
Hmm.
are very, very familiar with.
Yeah, it is. It is very challenging to unavoidably be
Right.
living in the shadow of one of the most iconic films
Yeah.
ever made, and you hit on a lot of great points there, Jen. Thank you so much for sharing those angles. I think where and it's actually, just quickly pondering what you've just shared kind of reframes what my original thoughts were going to be on this. And I'd say even though I am a bit nitpicky with some of the imagery compared to the original movie, stuff that doesn't look at all like it did in the 1939 movie, and you are a movie.
Right.
But more on that in a moment. Um, it does embrace the iconography of Oz.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
and from that opening title card to even some silhouettes in Emerald City and the Yellow Brick Road itself. And you mentioned kind of the morality play aspect earlier that a lot of Hans Christian Andersen and Grimm's fairy tales did, which we still have stories like that today. Take
Hmm.
slashers for example.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Teenagers, if you're promiscuous, you will die. So, but I feel that the movie, again, reflecting upon what you shared, it does preserve that the moral framework of the original movie, and that perception is not truth. I like to say perception is reality, true or not. But at the end of the day, perception isn't truth because you can perceive something and think it to be
Right.
true, and it isn't. And I feel it does preserve that. And you mentioned the whimsical world earlier. It
Hmm.
channels the theatrical whimsy of the original. Um, and I'm not trying to compare them apples and apples because one is entirely shot on a like just mechanically, one is shot entirely on a
Right.
sound stage, a traditional sound stage, Technicolor and all that. And this is different, but it does echo that musical bravado of MGM's film and that sense of wonder that it communicated. And I want to pick up here after our break while we're on the topic of the book and the movie and the play. So any thoughts you have, Jen, just hold on to those until we come back from our break. You are listening to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. I'm your host, R.L. Terry, and today I am joined by linguist and scholar and longtime friend of mine, Jennifer Weed. This hour, we are reviewing Wicked for Good. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more on our thoughts on the book turned Broadway show turned big screen adaptation after this break. Welcome back to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. I'm your host, R.L. Terry, and today I am joined by linguist and scholar and longtime friend of mine, Jennifer Weed. This hour, we are reviewing Wicked for Good. And Jen, before the break, we were talking about the hurdles, obstacles, triumphs, and failures, all these things associated with the movie when you're adapting from a stage play, a musical, or a book, or sometimes two. We've got, or all three. We've got a book, we've got a Broadway show, and we have an original movie. There's even the original book. We've got multiple kind of sources of origin story that in some form or fashion, major or minor, all play into Wicked. So we were talking about the kind of the relationship between the two, and kind of embodying the soul or the intent. You mentioned the intent of L. Frank Baum earlier, or the intent of our original filmmakers and novelists who have all played into this equation. But I'd argue, and you can make a counterpoint if you want. I'd argue that the intent by or desire of the novelist or playwright, a significant percentage of audience members are bringing with them the 1939 film, regardless of how the filmmakers and authors feel. The audiences are by default bringing the 1939 film with them to Wicked Part 1 and here Wicked Part 2. It doesn't matter to many, if not to most, that Wicked is based on a book, based on a Broadway show, and not the MGM Spectacular. Like, they're bringing that film with them because more people have seen it than probably read the book or seen the Broadway show. Maybe they've listened to the soundtrack from it. When adapting, and you can even pull on some of what you've applied in your reviews and thoughts on Lord of the Rings franchise, Narnia, and Harry Potter. And I know you're fans of all of those. So when adapting beloved source material, or even a legacy fantasy like Oz, where should a film draw the line between faithful recreation and creative reinterpretation, especially with respect to tone, continuity, and even world building? What do you think about those?
I think that is a really good question, and one that I've actually probably struggled with
Hmm.
a lot, because I am probably, especially when it comes to, for example, Lord of the Rings, I'm very
Hmm.
much a purist. I really, when I want to see out of what I want to see out of a Lord of the Rings adaptation is something that reflects Tolkien.
Hmm.
Um, and we can, I'm sure we could have loads of discussions on whether or not the current things are doing that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are certain types of things like, for example, comic books. Comic books get reimagined
Hmm.
all the time.
Hmm.
And you have comic books that have different iterations. And then of course they have multiple iterations of the movies. And I really do think that it comes down to what did the audience and what did the author, both, you have to put both in play. So what did the author
Hmm.
intend, but also what did the audience love about
Mm.
what the author intended?
Mm.
So, with comic books, it's more about the characters. So
Mhm.
are these characters being replicated faithfully through different iterations? And I think some people will like certain versions and they won't like other versions.
Mhm.
With Lord of the Rings, I want it to be reflective of what the soul of his project was, which was,
Mhm.
good versus evil. A big hope
Mhm.
in spite of adversity and that sort of thing. But with Oz, a lot of that is about a journey. And especially the world itself. I think
Mm.
the world itself is what brings people to it. So I think it's a really tough question because some
Mhm.
people are going to like some things and other people are not, and
Mhm.
it depends on the love and passion you bring to
Mm.
maybe a specific source material. But yeah, I don't have a problem so much with adaptations of Oz because I feel like there have been so many.
Mm.
At this point, it is kind of like a comic book type thing where there's so many different
Mhm.
iterations as long as Oz itself is what's there.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. It's just kind of what and the characters are fairly similar and
Mhm.
anyway, I don't know. It's a tough question to answer these days because I think there's good examples and bad examples of adaptations and you could you could go through all sorts of kinds and
Yeah.
and nowadays I think there's definitely more of a I'm going to tell the stories I want to tell. I don't really care about
Mm.
what the original intent was.
Mhm.
Sometimes it feels a bit like people want to tell um their own what do you call it? Fan fiction
Yeah.
of things. And there's definitely a line between is it fan fiction or is it
It's
actually something that was inspired and loved and passion and the
not a
core is still
complete
there.
retconning of
Right.
everything that came before.
Yeah.
So you feel for the most part that the homages to references to the little Easter eggs, when it intersects with the original movie, and even other past material.
Mhm.
I didn't see Return to Oz in there, but maybe even Return to Oz is in there somewhere. Uh, it So you feel that for the most part that it stuck that landing, like it.
Yeah.
Did that.
It
I'm
did not feel like fan fiction, I guess.
That's a great way of putting it. I like that. Did not
Yeah.
feel like fan fiction.
Right.
Me, I'm gonna come in a little bit lower than you on this because and it could be just I'm such a film guy. Eat,
Yeah.
sleep, breathe film. Walk in my house looks like a film museum. All of the posters and memorabilia, um, and so I feel that the I feel whenever Wicked intersects with the iconic imagery, and I'm not referring to how stuff was presented on the stage in Wicked's run. I'm talking about the 1939 MGM film. Whenever Wicked intersects that iconic imagery, and we get an intersection with it at the very beginning of both movies with the
Mhm.
title card. So it's undeniably they are making a connection to it. I've had
Yeah.
people tell me, well, they're, this is based on the books and not based on the movie. Okay, if that was 100% true, you would not start with the title card invoking the imagery of the original movie. So there's clearly an intent to, however, majorly or minorly connect this movie to the 1939 film. And I feel when it intersects with that movie, that the disconnect for me is very jarring.
Okay.
An easy example, and this is not a spoiler, folks, an easy example is the Wicked Witch of the West castle. It is, you can unmistakably pick that castle out of a lineup. Everybody who's ever seen the movie knows precisely what the castle looks like, and it looks lived in. And by lived in, I mean more than one night. So
Yeah.
it's a lived in castle. She's got the guards that are inspired by
I did miss
the
the OEO.
yes, the palace guards at Buckingham Palace, and so that's just one example. That's just an easy example to pull out that doesn't spoil anything. So it's just very jarring. So tonally, texturally, and aesthetically, for me, when it's intersecting with the movie, nothing matches. And I mentioned the castle. I mentioned the castle earlier, and then don't even get me started on Glinda's bubble. Hello, she is very clearly a magical being and travels by a magical bubble. I'm willing to believe that Elphaba is twice as powerful as Glinda. However, the movie establishes her as some level of magical being. And two examples of that: the shoes magically appear on Dorothy's feet, and the snow on the poppy field. So unless that's
That's
Madame
true.
Marvel
Yeah.
in the background, she's clearly has some magic. And I'll even say that
You mean the
she,
tulips? Those look like tulips to
well,
me in the
I think that they do look more like tulips than they do poppies. But she's clearly a magical being, travels by magical bubble. Not a, what is that, chase lounge with the thing all around it. So to rob Glinda of those elements is, in my opinion, to rob her of her original characterization. So for a film so eager to evoke some level of nostalgia, it's just mind-blowing to me its disregard for consistency with cinema's most beloved fantasy, or among its most beloved fantasy films. It's just baffling to me. But maybe I'm in the minority on that. Of
Well,
the of
I
those two things. What do you have to say to that?
I think I will say that I do think a lot of people there are a lot of people going into this looking at it from the lens of the musical.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it was a very popular musical. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Oh yes.
people, they love the music. I remember it being very popular when popular. Um, I remember it being very popular at a
Mm-hmm.
time, and still, especially now that it's in theaters, it's
Mm-hmm.
on everybody's mind. So I don't really have a problem so much with people reworking some elements of character
Mm-hmm.
like that, especially if that's kind of part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't necessarily with these kinds of adaptations,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is just like trying to think of a good word here, re-envisioning. Does
Mm-hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah.
Um, of the story itself. Because I mean, some of these things could not have fit together, from the
Mm-hmm.
original movie, even if you tried.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is an implication that that castle's been there for a long time and she's been living in it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that Nessa, her sister,
Mm-hmm.
really felt like a wicked witch of the East.
No, I don't either.
It's like she did kind of, I'm sure she did more than one bad thing, but
I
I
think
don't
the
know if
only
she
thing
earned
we
that
get is
title.
the whole, barring the citizens of Munchkin Land from leaving, which is, I mean, that is bad. That
Yeah.
is
Oh,
bad.
yeah, definitely.
But
But
I, Wicked Witch of the East, evil, bad.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
and I don't have a problem. I will say there has been a recent tendency in recent years of trying to
Hmm.
make evil characters as protagonists.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
now this book series has been around for a long time,
Hmm.
so, or well, the 90s, not as long
Hmm.
as I should think, but so I wouldn't say it's necessarily following along with, the current tendency to
Right.
do that. However, I think if you're going to do that, if you're going to give a villain something that redeems them or it
Hmm.
redeems their motivations, that does you shouldn't call it good.
Hmm.
You just give them motivations. And
Right.
and I think I don't have a problem. Like there's a I'm more of a literature person, but
Hmm.
like with Beowulf, the old English, poem,
Yes,
there
the
was
oldest
yeah,
English
oh yeah,
poem, if I
right.
remember correctly.
Mhm. Someone I can't remember the name of this, so, forgive me for not knowing this off the
Hmm.
top of my head. Someone wrote maybe it was a while back. It was way
Hmm.
before, I think it was before I was alive. But someone wrote a book about Grendel. So,
Mm.
looking into motivations of villains, I don't think is
Mhm.
necessarily a terrible way to re-envision a story,
Mhm.
but it needs to be, you can't just be calling evil good, I
Right.
guess. So, I don't have a problem with changing some things about character,
Mhm.
especially with Oz, which I feel like has somewhat of a everybody owns this story, kind of.
Yeah.
It's been in what public domain probably, right?
Yeah.
I would
For
say it's
I
public
don't know for
domain.
how long, but it's certainly been in
Mhm.
there for a long time
Yeah.
because after all, the book Wicked came out.
Mhm.
So at
Yeah.
least since the
That was the
90s,
90s, yeah.
so there's been it's been in the public domain. Now there's a lot of the original MGM movie not in the public domain.
Right.
Ruby Slippers being one because they were silver in
Well,
the
but
original
yeah,
movie,
the
and
the
some other
original
elements
book
too.
was silver.
Mhm.
The book was silver slippers, and then the
Yep.
movie changed it to ruby so that they could it was brighter, and so I actually kinda like that they had
Yeah.
silver slippers, and they turned
Yes.
red
They did.
for
We
a little
did get
bit.
that nod. I
For a
really
little bit.
appreciate that nod there.
Mhm.
But we're nearing the top of the hour, Jen. But I'd be remiss not to touch on anything that you felt we missed in our review this hour. So, is there anything else that you want to spotlight in Wicked for Good before we begin wrapping up here in just a moment?
This isn't necessarily about Wicked, this is just
Mm-hmm.
about Oz in general.
Mm-hmm.
But one of my favorite adaptations is, it was a mini series called Tin Man, and it starred, Neil McDonough,
Mm-hmm.
Zooey Deschanel, Richard Dreyfuss was in it. Who else was in it?
What a
Uh,
cast!
yeah, Alan Cumming.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
great
yeah,
cast.
yeah. So it was a mini series, and it was very
Mm-hmm.
popular in college. I was in
Mm-hmm.
college when I watched it, and
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's very campy, it's futuristic, it's steampunk.
Mm-hmm.
It probably breaks a lot of the stuff we talked about even more than Wicked for Good or
Mm-hmm.
Wicked in general.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that was, so maybe I just have a little bit more of a willingness to
Mm-hmm.
allow things, for Oz. But
Yeah.
I love that. I really did love that mini series. So I kind of like, I don't mind it when people change the story a little bit. So
Well, there you go, listeners. If you haven't checked out Tin Man, and Jen's not the only one talking about it on Twitter several times this week, I saw individuals talking about Tin Man. So I haven't seen it, listeners, but sounds like something I may want to check out. If nothing else, just to be able to be in on the discussion. But Jen liked it, so maybe go out and check that out here sometime soon. But Jen, thank you so much for being on Real Talk today. Hopefully, I will be seeing you at some point over Christmas coming
I
up
hope
here
so.
soon. So
Yeah.
if you missed any of today's episode, listeners, or to listen to past episodes of Real Talk or other shows on WKGC, we are on a podcatcher near you. Just search for WKGC Public Media on your podcast service of choice. Real Talk will be back the next 2 Mondays with a special treat for you. We are counting down our picks for top 20 Christmas movies. And that's way too much for one show. So we are going to go through picks 20 to 11 next Monday and then 10 to 1 the following week. And joining me for this two-parter to close out the year episode is Brad from the Cinema Speak podcast, whom you know as subbing for me a handful of times over this season. But for now, stay tuned for Jazz in a Minor Key with Walter Hale coming up next, followed by the afternoon spin with DJ Maggie starting at 3 o'clock. Thanks to all of you for listening. I hope you'll tune in again next week, same time, same place, for more Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. Support for WKGC Public Media comes from listeners like you, people who believe in the power of local radio to inform, inspire, and connect the Emerald Coast community. Your gift helps keep educational and entertaining programs on the air while creating hands-on learning opportunities for students. Become a listener supporter today and give securely at WKGC.org. WKGC, education, entertainment, and everything in between.